Life aboard the Defiant changed completely after Zarketh joined the crew. The massive Krathon warrior needed special accommodations that the ship was never designed to provide. His quarters had to be completely rebuilt to fit his 9-foot frame, and the medical bay required new equipment to monitor his alien biology. Chief Engineer Ron Parker spent days working with Dr. Grant to design a mobility system for their paralyzed guest. They started with a simple wheeled platform but quickly realized that Zarketh needed something more sophisticated. His 4 arms gave him different balance needs than a human, and his massive weight required stronger materials. Many of the crew members were not happy about the changes. Resources were limited during wartime, and every modification for Zarketh meant less of something else for everyone. Food supplies had to be adjusted because Krathon dietary needs were different from humans. Power consumption increased because of all the new medical equipment. Even simple things like doorways had to be widened. Lieutenant Carter was the most vocal about his concerns. He approached Morrison in his quarters one evening with a formal complaint. "Commander, I respect what you did for Zarketh, but this situation is getting out of hand. The crew is starting to question your judgment. We are fighting a war, and we cannot afford to be running a charity mission." Morrison understood his officers' concerns, but he was not ready to give up on his friend. "Have you talked to Zarketh about tactical analysis?" he asked. His insights about Vorthan battle strategies could be very valuable. Carter shook his head. "Sir, with respect, he is a broken warrior who cannot even move without help. What good are his strategies now? The war has moved beyond anything he might know about." Morrison decided to prove his point by bringing Carter to see Zarketh in his modified quarters. The big warrior was working with Communications Officer Kate Stevens to repair and upgrade his damaged translator. The device had been giving him trouble since the rescue, and Stevens had volunteered to help improve it. Zarketh looked up when they entered. His mobility platform was a work of art created by Parker's engineering team. It moved smoothly and quietly, allowing the warrior to navigate the ship's corridors without assistance. More importantly, it gave him back some dignity and independence. Commander Morrison said Zarketh using his newly repaired translator. "I have been studying the battle reports from our recent engagements with the Vorthans. There are several tactical errors that could be corrected with better understanding of enemy movement patterns." Carter looked skeptical, but Morrison encouraged Zarketh to continue. The warrior called up a holographic display that showed the last 3 battles the Coalition had fought. His 4 hands moved quickly over the controls, highlighting different sections of the tactical maps. "Here," said Zarketh, pointing to a cluster of enemy ships. "The Vorthans always position their command vessel in this formation when they expect a long fight, but human commanders keep treating it like a standard battle group. If you attack from these angles instead, you can force them to break formation much earlier." Morrison watched Carter's expression change as Zarketh explained several more tactical concepts. The young officer had not expected such detailed analysis from someone who could no longer fight directly. It was clear that the warrior's mind was as sharp as ever, even if his body was broken. Over the following weeks, Zarketh became more involved with the ship's operations. He worked with the navigation team to identify better hyperspace routes that avoided known Vorthan patrol patterns. His knowledge of alien technology helped the engineering crew make improvements to their defensive systems. The breakthrough moment came when young Ensign Pete Collins approached Zarketh with questions about Krathon culture. Collins was fresh out of the academy and genuinely curious about the different alien races in the Coalition. Most crew members were still uncomfortable around the massive warrior, but Collins seemed fascinated by him. "Tell me about your homeworld," said Collins during one of his visits. "What is it like to grow up as a Krathon warrior?" Zarketh seemed surprised by the question. No human had ever asked him about his childhood before. He began describing the harsh desert world where Krathon children learned to fight almost before they could walk. Combat training started at age 5 and continued until death or injury made further fighting impossible. Collins listened with wide eyes as Zarketh explained the complex honor codes that governed Krathon society. Warriors who showed cowardice were exiled, but those who fought bravely were celebrated even in defeat. The highest honor was to die fighting for the tribe or the alliance. "But what about warriors who get hurt?" asked Collins. Surely there must be some way for them to contribute without direct combat. Zarketh's expression grew sad. In my culture, a warrior who cannot fight is already dead. They are given a final meal and allowed to die with whatever honor they have earned. It is considered merciful to end their suffering quickly rather than let them live in shame. Collins was clearly troubled by this explanation. That seems wasteful, he said. Even if you cannot fight anymore, you still know everything you learned as a warrior. All that knowledge and experience just gets thrown away. Morrison watched this conversation from across the room and realized that Collins had identified something important. Human culture viewed disability differently than Krathon culture. Humans tried to find new ways for injured people to contribute rather than simply discarding them. This difference in perspective started to affect Zarketh in ways Morrison had not expected. The warrior began spending more time with different crew members, learning about human customs and sharing his own knowledge. He helped Dr. Grant understand Krathon biology better, which improved medical care for other alien crew members. Stevens worked with Zarketh to create better translation protocols for interspecies communication. His understanding of multiple alien languages made him valuable for diplomatic contacts with coalition partners. Parker found that Zarketh's four-armed perspective helped solve engineering problems that had puzzled human designers for months. Most importantly, Zarketh started teaching combat techniques to human soldiers who wanted to learn. Even though he could not demonstrate the moves physically anymore, his understanding of tactics and strategy was as good as ever. He could spot weaknesses in fighting techniques that human instructors missed. Morrison noticed that his friend seemed less depressed as the weeks passed. Zarketh was finding new purposes beyond direct combat. The warrior was learning that strength could come from knowledge and wisdom, not just from physical ability. The real test came during a small skirmish with Vorthon raiders. Morrison put Zarketh in charge of coordinating defensive systems from his position on the bridge. The warrior's mobility platform was connected directly to the ship's tactical computers, allowing him to control multiple weapon systems with his four arms. Morrison watched in amazement as Zarketh orchestrated a perfect defensive pattern. His paralyzed body had become the nervous system for the entire ship. Every movement of his hands controlled different aspects of their defense, while his tactical knowledge guided their strategy. The battle was won without a single human casualty and with minimal damage to the ship. For the first time since his injury, Zarketh looked truly satisfied with his performance. "I begin to understand," said Zarketh after the battle. "Humans do not see strength the same way Krathons do. You believe that different kinds of strength can be equally valuable?" Morrison nodded. "We believe that everyone has something to contribute. Sometimes it just takes time to figure out what that contribution should be." Zarketh was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke in a voice filled with something Morrison had never heard from him before: hope. The shuttle touched down on the rocky surface of the moon, with a soft thud that Morrison barely felt through his boots. The air outside was thin but breathable, thanks to the atmosphere generators that had been placed here months ago. Through the small windows he could see the ruins of Coalition Outpost 7 spread across the landing area like broken teeth. Morrison grabbed his rifle and activated his comm unit. The team had practiced this kind of rescue many times, but never under such dangerous conditions. "Baker, you take point and watch for enemy scouts. Grant, stay close to me and be ready to work fast. We probably have 10 minutes before those Vorthon ships get here." They moved quickly through the rubble looking for any sign of their wounded friend. The outpost had been hit hard during the battle, and most of the buildings were just piles of twisted metal and broken concrete. Morrison followed his scanner toward the strongest life sign reading. They found Zarketh trapped under a collapsed section of the main bunker. The massive Krathon warrior was conscious but could not move. His usually bright yellow eyes were dim with pain and his breathing was shallow. One of his forearms was bent at an impossible angle and Morrison could see dark blood pooling beneath the debris. "Human Morrison," said Zarketh in his deep rumbling voice. His translator device was damaged and sparking but still working. "You should not be here. Leave me to die with honor as a warrior should." Morrison knelt down beside his alien friend and checked the debris that pinned him. The concrete slab was heavy, but they could move it with the right leverage. Not happening, big guy. We do not leave friends behind. Zarketh tried to shake his massive head, but even that small movement caused him pain. Your human customs are foolish. I cannot fight anymore, I cannot even stand. In Krathon culture, I am already dead. My own people know this and have acted correctly by leaving me. Dr. Grant was already running her medical scanner over the trapped warrior. The readings made her frown with concern. She looked up at Morrison and spoke quietly so Zarketh could not hear. The damage to his spine is severe, Commander. Even if we get him free, he will never walk again. The neural pathways are completely severed. Morrison felt anger rising in his chest, but he pushed it down. Right now, the only thing that mattered was getting Zarketh to safety. They could worry about everything else later. Baker had found a metal beam that could work as a lever. She and Corporal Danny White were already positioning it under the concrete slab. On 3, she said. 1, 2, 3. They pushed with all their strength, and the heavy debris shifted just enough for Morrison to grab Zarketh under his shoulders. The big warrior was incredibly heavy, even with his natural armor damaged. It took all 3 humans working together to pull him free from the wreckage. Zarketh cried out in pain as they moved him, but he did not resist. Morrison could see that the warrior was confused by what the humans were doing. In his culture, showing mercy to a crippled fighter was considered an insult. But Morrison did not care about Krathon customs right now. Grant immediately went to work checking Zarketh for injuries. Besides the obvious spine damage, he had several broken ribs and internal bleeding. She gave him an injection of human painkillers that she hoped would work on Krathon biology. We need to get him back to the ship now, she said. He is losing too much blood and I cannot do major surgery here. Baker was watching the horizon through her rifle scope. Commander, we have company. I can see Vorthan scout ships about 5 miles out and they are heading this way fast. Morrison activated his comm to contact the shuttle pilot. Collins, bring the shuttle over here now. We need immediate pickup. The young pilot's voice crackled through the comm. Roger, Commander, but we better hurry. I am picking up at least 15 enemy ships on approach. Morrison looked down at Zarketh, who was watching him with those dim yellow eyes. The warrior was still conscious, and Morrison could see he was trying to understand why humans would risk their lives for him. In my culture, said Zarketh, speaking slowly through his damaged translator, a warrior who cannot fight is worthless. He brings shame to his family and his people. It is better for everyone if such a warrior dies quickly and is forgotten. Morrison helped lift his friend as the shuttle landed nearby. That is not how humans think, big guy. We believe that everyone has value no matter what they can or cannot do. You have been fighting beside us for 3 years. You have saved our lives many times. Now it is our turn to save yours. The process of getting Zarketh into the shuttle was difficult and painful. His massive frame barely fit through the door, and they had to remove several seats to make room. Grant worked quickly to stabilize his injuries while Baker and White watched for enemy soldiers. The first Vorthan scouts appeared just as they were lifting off. Morrison could see them through the shuttle window, small, fast ships designed for quick attacks. They opened fire as the shuttle climbed toward the Defiant, but Collins was a skilled pilot and managed to avoid most of the weapons' fire. Morrison held on to Zarketh as the shuttle shook under enemy fire. The wounded warrior was looking at him with something that might have been gratitude or maybe just confusion. Morrison had never seen a Krathon look so lost and uncertain. Why do you do this? Asked Zarketh. Your military commanders will be angry that you disobeyed orders. Your crew will think you are foolish for risking their lives. What do you gain by saving a broken warrior? Morrison thought about how to explain human values to someone from such a different culture. We gain a friend, he said finally. We gain the knowledge that we did the right thing. And maybe we show your people that there are other ways to think about strength and honor. The shuttle docked with the Defiant just as the main Vorthan fleet arrived. Carter had kept the ship ready as ordered, and they jumped to hyperspace within seconds of the shuttle coming aboard. Morrison could see the relief on his crew's faces as they escaped the enemy ships. But now came the hard part. They had rescued Zarketh from certain death, but Morrison knew that bringing him back to Krathon space would be the same as killing him. The warrior culture would never accept a paralyzed fighter. They would quietly euthanize him to spare their people the shame of having a crippled warrior among them. Morrison made another decision that went against military protocol. Instead of taking Zarketh to a Krathon medical facility, he ordered the ship to head for human space. If the big warrior was going to have a chance at any kind of life, it would have to be among humans who did not see disability as a death sentence. Zarketh did not protest when Morrison explained the plan. The warrior seemed too exhausted and confused to argue. Morrison wondered if he had done the right thing, or if he had just prolonged his friend's suffering. Only time would tell if a paralyzed Krathon warrior could find a new purpose among humans who refused to give up on him. The red warning lights flashed across the bridge of the human warship Defiant as Commander Jake Morrison watched his screens with growing concern. The battle had gone badly for everyone involved, and now the retreat order was coming through from Fleet Command. His ship shook under another round of enemy fire as the Vorthan Empire forces pressed their attack on the small moon below them. Morrison was a veteran of many space battles, but this one felt different. The coalition of human and alien forces had been working together for 3 years now, fighting against the Vorthons who wanted to take over this part of the galaxy. The humans had found good friends among the stars, especially with a warrior race, called the Krathon, who stood 9 feet tall and had 4 arms each strong enough to crush metal. Lieutenant Alex Carter rushed over to Morrison with the latest reports. The young officer looked worried as he spoke. "The evacuation ships are leaving, sir, and we need to go too. The Vorthons will be here in just a few minutes and we cannot fight them all off." Morrison nodded, but something was bothering him. He looked down at his thermal scanner that showed the surface of the moon below. Most of the heat signatures had disappeared as ships carried away the wounded and the living, but one large signature remained near what used to be Coalition Outpost 7. The signature was huge, much bigger than a human. Morrison knew that size, and he knew who it belonged to. Zarketh was still down there. Zarketh had been fighting alongside humans for 3 years now. The massive Krathon warrior had saved more human lives than Morrison could count. He was faster than any human and stronger than 10 humans put together. His natural armor could stop most small weapons, and his 4 arms made him deadly in close combat. But more than that, Zarketh had become a friend to many of the human soldiers. Morrison remembered the first time they met. The Krathon had been suspicious of humans at first, thinking they were too small and weak to be useful in a real fight. But after seeing humans fight with courage even when they were outmatched, Zarketh had changed his mind. He started learning human languages and customs. He even learned to joke with the human soldiers, though his jokes were usually about fighting and honor. The thermal signature on Morrison's screen was not moving. That was very bad news. Zarketh never stayed still during a battle unless something was seriously wrong. "Commander, we really need to leave now," said Carter, looking at the approaching enemy ships on his own screen. "The Vorthons have at least 20 ships heading this way." Morrison switched his scanner to life signs mode. The reading showed that Zarketh was alive, but barely. His vital signs were weak and getting weaker. Morrison had seen readings like this before, and they usually meant someone was badly hurt and could not move. He thought about what he knew of Krathon culture. The warrior race had very strict rules about honor and fighting. A Krathon who could no longer fight was considered dead, already, even if his heart was still beating. Their evacuation ships would not have waited for a wounded warrior who could not walk or fight. They would have left him behind to die with whatever honor he had left. The idea made Morrison angry. Zarketh had fought bravely for the coalition, and for humanity. He had saved human lives and treated human soldiers like his own brothers. Now his own people had abandoned him because he was hurt. Morrison made a decision that went against everything he had been taught in military school. He turned to Carter and spoke in a calm voice that hid his growing anger. "Prep the shuttle," he said. "We are going down to get him." Carter stared at his commander in shock. "Sir, we cannot do that. The retreat order is direct from Fleet Command. If we stay here, we will all die. One alien warrior is not worth losing our entire ship and crew." Morrison looked at his young officer and saw the fear in his eyes. Carter was right about the danger. Going down to the surface would put every human on the Defiant at risk. The smart military decision would be to follow orders and retreat with the rest of the fleet. But Morrison was not thinking like a military commander right now. He was thinking like a friend who would not leave another friend behind to die alone. "That alien warrior has saved more human lives than I can count," said Morrison. "He has fought beside us and bled beside us. He has treated every human soldier like family. Now his own people have left him to die because their culture says he is worthless if he cannot fight. Well, our culture says we do not abandon our friends." Carter still looked worried, but Morrison could see that his words were having an effect. The other bridge crew members had stopped their work to listen. They all knew Zarketh, and they all respected him. Dr. Helen Grant spoke up from her position at the medical station. "If he is as badly hurt as the scanners show, we will need to move very carefully. Any rough handling could kill him." Sergeant Lisa Baker was already checking her weapons. "If we are going down there, Commander, we better move fast. Those Vorthan ships will be in weapons range soon." Morrison nodded and started giving orders. "Baker, you take 2 soldiers and secure the landing area. Grant, you bring whatever medical equipment you can carry. Carter, you stay here and keep the ship ready for a fast takeoff. If we are not back in 20 minutes, you leave without us." Carter started to protest, but Morrison cut him off. "That is an order, Lieutenant. These people are counting on you to get them home safely." The shuttle bay was busy as Morrison's small team prepared for what might be a suicide mission. Everyone knew the risks, but nobody complained. Zarketh had earned their loyalty through 3 years of fighting together. As they loaded medical equipment and weapons, Morrison thought about all the times Zarketh had risked his own life for humans. The big warrior had once carried 3 wounded human soldiers out of a collapsing building during a battle on Kepler Station. Another time, he had held off an entire squad of Vorthon soldiers alone, while a human medical team evacuated casualties. Now it was time for humans to return that loyalty. The shuttle launched from the Defiant, just as the first Vorthon ships appeared on the long-range scanners. Morrison piloted the small craft toward the ruined outpost where Zarketh waited. He could see explosions in space behind them. 6 months had passed since Zarketh joined the crew of the Defiant, and the ship had become his new home in ways Morrison never expected. The massive warrior had thrown himself into learning everything he could about human technology and tactics. His quarters were filled with technical manuals and battle reports that he studied during his free time. The real breakthrough came when Zarketh approached Chief Engineer Parker with an unusual idea. The Krathon had been watching the engineering team's work on shield harmonics and noticed something that human designers had missed. Krathon ships used a different approach to energy distribution that might work with human technology. Parker was skeptical at first. Human and Krathon engineering principles were very different, and mixing them had never been tried before. But Zarketh insisted that his paralyzed condition gave him a unique perspective on energy flow patterns. He could no longer feel physical strength, but he had become incredibly sensitive to other kinds of energy. They spent weeks working together in the engineering lab. Zarketh's 4 arms allowed him to manipulate multiple control systems at once, while Parker handled the more delicate human equipment. The wheelchair-bound warrior proved to have an intuitive understanding of power systems that impressed even the veteran engineer. The first prototype shield array they created was twice as efficient as the standard human design. It could absorb more enemy fire while using less power from the ship's reactors. Morrison was amazed when Parker showed him the test results. "How did he figure this out?" Morrison asked, as he reviewed the technical specifications. Parker shrugged. "He says being paralyzed made him think about energy in new ways. He cannot move his body the way he used to, so he started thinking about how energy moves through systems instead. It is like he traded physical strength for a different kind of understanding." Word of the innovation spread quickly through the human fleet. Other ships requested copies of the new shield design, and engineers from across the coalition wanted to study Zarketh's work. The paralyzed warrior who had been abandoned by his own people was suddenly in high demand. Communications Officer Stevens helped Zarketh set up video conferences with engineering teams on other ships. His translator had been upgraded so many times that it was now better than the original Krathon version. He could speak clearly with humans, aliens, and AI systems without any communication barriers. During one memorable conference call, Zarketh explained his design philosophy to a group of human admirals. When you cannot rely on physical strength, he said, you must find other sources of power. Human technology is very good at generating energy but not as good at using it efficiently. Krathon methods can help with this problem. Admiral Susan Brooks, who commanded the Third Fleet, was particularly impressed. "Commander Morrison," she said during a private communication, "your disabled warrior has revolutionized our defensive capabilities. How did you know he would be so valuable?" Morrison thought about how to answer that question. He had not rescued Zarketh because he thought the warrior would be useful. He had done it simply because it was the right thing to do. Sometimes, he said, the best discoveries come from unexpected places. The success with shield technology led to other innovations. Zarketh worked with Dr. Grant to develop new medical techniques that combined human surgical methods with Krathon healing practices. His understanding of alien biology helped create treatments that worked for multiple species. Ensign Collins continued to visit Zarketh regularly, and their conversations had evolved into formal cultural exchange sessions. Collins was learning Krathon history and philosophy, while Zarketh studied human social structures and values. Other crew members started joining these sessions, and they became popular events. One evening, Collins asked Zarketh about his dreams for the future. "Before your injury, what did you hope to accomplish as a warrior?" Zarketh was quiet for a long time before answering. "I wanted to die gloriously in battle and be remembered as a great fighter. That was the highest goal any Krathon could have. Now I'm not sure what I want." Collins looked thoughtful. "Maybe the goal should not be about how you die, but about what you create while you live. You have already helped save more lives with your shield designs than most warriors save in combat." This conversation marked another turning point for Zarketh. He began thinking about legacy in completely new ways. Instead of wanting to be remembered for dying well, he started wanting to be remembered for the knowledge he could share and the problems he could solve. The ultimate test of his new perspective came during the Battle of Titan's Edge. The Coalition fleet was outnumbered 3-1 by Vorthan forces, and the situation looked hopeless. Traditional battle tactics would result in heavy losses even if they managed to win. Morrison brought Zarketh to the main bridge for the battle. The warrior's mobility platform had been upgraded with direct neural interfaces that allowed him to connect with the ship's computer systems. His paralyzed body became the central nervous system for the entire defensive network. Zarketh coordinated the movements of 12 coalition ships as if they were extensions of his own body. His 4 arms controlled different aspects of the battle, while his mind processed tactical information faster than any human could manage. The combination of Krathon instincts and human technology created something entirely new. Morrison watched in amazement as his friend orchestrated the most complex battle maneuver he had ever seen. Ships moved in perfect harmony, switching between offensive and defensive positions with split-second timing. The new shield arrays absorbed incredible amounts of enemy fire, while the coordinated attacks found every weakness in the Vorthan formation. The enemy fleet was completely defeated with minimal coalition losses. It was the first major victory against the Vorthans in over a year, and the turning point everyone had been hoping for. News of the battle spread throughout human and alien space, making Zarketh famous across the galaxy. After the battle, Morrison found his friend in his quarters staring out at the stars through the viewport. The massive warrior looked thoughtful rather than celebrating their victory. "How do you feel?" Morrison asked. "Different," said Zarketh. "I have spent my whole life learning to be a warrior who fights with claws and strength. Today I discovered I can be a different kind of warrior, one who fights with knowledge and coordination. I am not the same person I was before my injury." Morrison sat down beside his friend. "Do you miss who you used to be?" Zarketh considered the question carefully. "I miss being able to walk and fight directly. But I have learned things about myself that I never knew before. My people say that a paralyzed warrior is worthless, but today I was more powerful than I ever was when I could walk. I think my people might be wrong about many things. The victory at Titan's Edge changed everything for both Zarketh and the Coalition forces. The paralyzed warrior's tactics became standard procedure for fleet operations. His story inspired other injured soldiers, both human and alien, to look for new ways to contribute to the war effort. Most importantly, the Krathon Council back on the homeworld began to hear reports about their abandoned warrior who had become a hero among the humans. For the first time in their history, they were forced to question whether their traditional views about disability and honor might need to be reconsidered. 2 years after the Battle of Titan's Edge, the war with the Vorthan Empire was finally coming to an end. Zarketh's innovative tactics had been adopted by the entire coalition fleet, and his shield designs had saved countless lives. The paralyzed warrior who had been abandoned on a battlefield had become the most important strategic mind in the Alliance. Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiant watching as the final Vorthan stronghold surrendered to coalition forces. Beside him, Zarketh operated his advanced command interface, coordinating the movements of over 50 ships with the precision of a master artist. The massive warrior had grown into his role as fleet coordinator, and his confidence showed in every gesture. The formal surrender ceremony took place on the neutral station Deep Space Nine, where representatives from dozens of species gathered to witness the end of the conflict. Zarketh was invited to attend as one of the heroes of the war, despite the fact that many Krathon officials were still uncomfortable with his presence. Morrison watched his friend navigate the crowded ceremony hall in his mobility platform. The device had been upgraded so many times that it was now a masterpiece of engineering. Zarketh moved with grace and dignity, commanding respect from every person he met regardless of their species. Admiral Brooks approached them during the reception with exciting news. "Commander Morrison," she said, "Zarketh, I have a proposal that I think will interest you both. The Coalition wants to establish a new institution dedicated to helping wounded soldiers from all species adapt to their injuries and find new purposes. We would like Zarketh to run it." Zarketh looked surprised by the offer. "You want me to teach other injured warriors?" he asked, "even those who come from cultures that consider disability shameful?" Brooks nodded. "Your story has inspired soldiers throughout the galaxy. Many injured fighters have requested the chance to learn from you. We believe you could help them discover new ways to serve, even if they cannot fight in traditional ways anymore." Morrison felt proud as he watched his friend consider the proposal. Zarketh had come so far from the broken warrior they had rescued from that battlefield. He had learned to see strength in ways his own culture never taught him. "I accept," said Zarketh finally. "But I want Morrison to help me." He was the first to believe that a paralyzed warrior could still have value. His perspective will be important for this work. The Interspecies Rehabilitation Center was established 6 months later on a beautiful world called Haven that had been chosen specifically for its peaceful environment. Zarketh threw himself into the work with the same intensity he had once brought to combat training. The first students were a mixture of humans, aliens, and even some artificial intelligences that had been damaged during the war. Each case was different, but Zarketh approached them all with patience and understanding. He had learned that adaptation was not about accepting limitation, but about finding new sources of power. One of his first success stories was a human pilot named Gary Chen, who had lost both legs in a crash. Chen was convinced that his flying days were over, until Zarketh showed him how to modify his prosthetics to interface directly with ship controls. The new system actually gave Chen better reflexes than biological legs had provided. Another student was a crystal-based alien named Harmonix, whose communication organs had been destroyed by Vorthan weapons. Zarketh helped develop a new translation matrix that allowed Harmonix to communicate through light patterns projected directly from the center's computers. The alien became a gifted teacher, helping other students learn to adapt their communication methods. The center's reputation grew quickly, and students came from across the galaxy to study there. Zarketh developed a philosophy he called adaptive strength that focused on finding new abilities rather than mourning lost ones. His motto became famous throughout Coalition space. "A warrior's strength is not in his body, but in his refusal to surrender," he would tell new students. "Your injury is not the end of your story. It is simply the beginning of a new chapter." The success of the center began to change attitudes throughout the galaxy. Species that had traditionally discarded their disabled members started sending them to Haven instead. Even the proud Krathon Council was forced to reconsider their ancient customs when they saw what their abandoned warriors could accomplish. Morrison visited the center regularly and was amazed by the transformations he witnessed. Soldiers who had arrived broken and hopeless left with new purposes and renewed confidence. Zarketh had created something that went far beyond simple rehabilitation. He had built a place where people could discover entirely new versions of themselves. The most significant change came when a delegation from the Krathon homeworld arrived at Haven. They had come to see for themselves what their abandoned warrior had accomplished. Morrison watched nervously as the proud alien dignitaries toured the facility. High Commander Thrakdor was the leader of the delegation and one of the most traditional Krathon leaders. He observed Zarketh working with students and listened to presentations about the center's methods. His expression remained stern throughout the visit. Finally, Thrakdor requested a private meeting with Zarketh. Morrison was allowed to attend as Zarketh's human advocate. The meeting took place in the center's memorial garden, where names of fallen warriors from all species were displayed on crystal walls. "You have brought great attention to our people," said Thrakdor, speaking in formal Krathon. "Some say you have brought honor while others claim you have brought shame. What do you say to these accusations?" Zarketh met his leader's gaze without flinching. "I say that I'm still serving our people and our allies, just in a different way than before. I may not carry weapons anymore, but I have helped create new kinds of strength that serve the same purposes." Thrakdor walked among the memorial crystals, reading the names of warriors who had died in the recent war. "Many of these deaths could have been prevented if we had your shield designs and tactical innovations available earlier," he said quietly. "How many lives might have been saved if we had not abandoned our injured warriors in the past?" Morrison held his breath as he watched the internal struggle playing out on the High Commander's face. Krathon culture was thousands of years old, and changing it would not be easy. Finally, Thrakdor turned back to Zarketh. "The Council has voted to establish our own rehabilitation facilities based on your methods. We want you to train Krathon, instructors who can work with our injured warriors. Will you help us learn to value different kinds of strength?" Zarketh bowed his head in the traditional Krathon gesture of respect. "I will help in any way I can. Change is difficult, but it is necessary for growth." The ceremony marking the end of the Vorthan War took place 1 year later. Zarketh was awarded the Coalition Medal of Honor, the highest decoration that could be given to any member of the Alliance. As he accepted the award, Morrison thought about everything that had happened since that day on the battlefield, when he decided not to abandon his friend. In his acceptance speech, Zarketh spoke about the importance of seeing potential in unexpected places. Sometimes, he said, the greatest victories come not from traditional strength, but from the courage to try new approaches. "A paralyzed warrior taught me that disability is not about what you cannot do, but about discovering what you never knew you could do." Morrison was called to the stage to receive recognition for his role in Zarketh's rescue and rehabilitation. As he stood beside his friend, he reflected on the simple decision that had changed both their lives forever. When asked by reporters why he had risked everything to save one alien warrior, Morrison's answer was the same as always. "We do not leave people behind. That is what makes us human." The story of Zarketh became a cornerstone of interspecies relations and proof that compassion could create unexpected miracles. The paralyzed warrior who was left to die had become a symbol of adaptation, resilience, and the power of refusing to give up on others. His legacy lived on in the thousands of beings who learned that being broken was just the first step to becoming something extraordinary.